pero no lo veo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good day. Hope everybody's doing well. My name is Federico Hernandez from Zavvy and therumlad.com. I'm here with my friend Knud. Before we start with the introduction, or before we start talking about it, going deep diving into the rum topic, let me just do a really quick intro. Today we're talking about Africa, the new rum continent, and this is actually a really hot topic. Just a quick introduction. Of course, we just did that. Tools, everybody who's right now in Crowdcast or using our platform in Zavvy.co. To your right, you'll see our tools. You'll see the chat box. You can write any comment. Thank you for everybody who's already started to write comments. Hi, Gail. Good to see you.
Hey.
If you have any questions during the event, on the bottom of the space, there's ask questions. We're going to try to respond to any questions we have at the very end. We ask everybody to please share the event. You can see that to the upper right side of Crowdcast. If you're in Facebook right now, come to Zavvy.co and participate directly here. Today's agenda is going to be around 30-40 minutes, main presentation, 1 or 2 minutes about the contact information. And then if we have some questions, then we go to a rum o'clock Q&A. I already have my African tradition rum, not African continent rum, but it's African rum from the Sisters and Brothers of Africa. Today's main topic is Africa, the new rum continent. As mentioned, we have our guest, Knud Strand. He's actually like an international man, i.e. from Denmark, France, Mauritius, lived in Spain and Venezuela. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's super interesting. It was like, how can you be from such international? Went to business school and did a little bit of law school, worked for a Danish designer furniture in Denmark, then high-end cosmetic in France as a global export manager, then 7 years in Bacardi Martini doing sales, and then today he's the founder of Left Hand Spirits. All right, let's bring in Mr. Well, he's already here. Let's just put the screen nice and big. How you doing, Knud?
Very well, and you? I can see that you're enjoying the sunshine in the US, whereas here in France, the sun is going down. And yeah, so for me, it's the right time to drink rum. For you, I guess it's still a bit early, but hey, let's talk.
It's 1 p.m. here. It's 1 p.m., 10 p.m. there.
Hey, that's good. That's good.
4 p.m. in East Coast. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So before we even start, so you were drinking a Mauritian rum, right? Penny Blue.
I am drinking Penny Blue XO.
Yeah.
Batch number 2.
Yeah. Nice one, and actually really fun with the Penny Blues that each batch is totally different, so you really get different types of rums. I tried up to batch 5 or 6, I think, maybe even 7. But anyway, and there are different sizes, but nice rum. Yeah, enjoy it. And as you were saying, when I was a kid, I lived on the island of Mauritius.
That's awesome.
And actually, I lived in Grand Bay, which is right close to where another Mauritian rum, the biggest producer of rum, is Gray's Distilleries, that produced the New Grow rum and the base of rum for many other rums sold as Mauritian or African rums. Yeah, great place. I guess I grew up with sugarcane, so even though you then live in Europe, it's always in your blood, and yeah.
But how come you live in so many places? So where were you born, first of all?
Well, I was born in Copenhagen.
Okay, Denmark.
Very much in the center of Copenhagen in Denmark, yeah. And then little by little, what happened was my parents were quite international. My mom was a model, and she, after divorcing my dad, went to live in France and then Mauritius, so I followed her there. And my dad was still living in Denmark, but he went to live in France and then came back to Denmark. So back and forth all the time. And I grew up basically between Paris and Copenhagen. And then, as I said, when my mom moved to Mauritius, then I followed her there. And then I came back to Paris, back to Denmark. And then later on, I was always fascinated by Spanish. Long stupid story, but I used to like hip hop a lot, like real hardcore hip hop, and some of the lyrics back then from the Two Live Crew were in Spanish, and I was like, I can't understand shit of what these guys are saying.
Those were hardcore words, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I really want to know. And then in Denmark, I was given the option of learning Spanish, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to learn Spanish. And then at the end of college, I left to study a little bit more Spanish in Madrid. So I went to live in Madrid for a certain while, and studied there at a business school, and then realized that I wasn't learning that much more than I had already learned in school in Denmark. So I started just partying and working with bars in Madrid for many, many months of not seeing the sun, just going out when the sun goes down and coming home when the sun goes up, and just living the nightlife. Always loved that. That's also, besides my resume that you just gave, I always help people in the bar industry and in the nightclub industry because I grew up with it. I have an older brother who was a friend of these guys of his age who were all discotheque owners. So at the age of 15, I had like these VIP passes to get into nightclubs where you had to be 21 or 23. And when my dad wanted to go out partying, he was like, hey, son, we share the same names, all the same names. And he was like, can I borrow your cards for your nightclubs, please? And I was like 16, and my dad at that time was like, I don't know, almost in his 50s. And he was like, here, Dad, here's the VIP card for Netset Club. Here's the VIP club for Privé. And here's the VIP. I had the cards for everything thanks to my elder brother. Anyway, so I was always, I was a bartender. My first job before, to make some money before going to Spain was as a bartender in Copenhagen, well, in Bakken, which is an amusement fairground, whatever, outside Copenhagen. Started out as a bartender there at the age of 18. And for your American audience, in Europe, we are allowed to drink a lot earlier than in the US. So, 14, 15 is, normal, and not totally legal, but normal. And then when you can become a bartender at the age of 18. So anyway, and my passion was always spirits, and I got into it, and even into rum back then, very early on. And then when I was doing all these different jobs, when I was working in furniture in Denmark, I would help my friends out in bars and nightclubs over the weekend. And when I moved to France, because my mom was still living in Paris, and I got into high-end cosmetics as an export manager. So I was traveling to nice countries like, I don't know, the UK, Thailand, whatever, had customers all around the world. And I would spend a lot of time in five-star bars, and then realizing that, alcohol wasn't just what I was used to seeing in Denmark. There was some really good stuff out there being sold at these high-end bars. And, when you got nothing else better to do and the company's paying, you sit down in the bar and you look at what people are doing. And then after half an hour or whatever, you come up with an idea for a cocktail that you would like to try with some different spirits and all that. So it was always part of my passion. And then many years later, a friend of mine, Philippe Mille, who was the brand ambassador, global brand ambassador for Cachaça Le Blanc at that time, but then got bought off by Bacardi. He was from Brazil, and I had a ex-girlfriend who was French-Brazilian, so I spent a lot of time in Brazil as well, like a month every year for like 6 years. So, and at that time, it was really weird because for me, like the whole cachaça culture, the caipirinhas and all of that, it wasn't rum at all. That was just the Brazilian way of doing things. And, I didn't think more about it than that. It was just great stuff. And then many years later, when I started working with Bacardi Martini, thanks to my friend Philippe, who was already in the company, then I started to realize that, cachaça and sugarcane spirits and the French traditions of sugarcane, of white rums, were very much similar. And that got me going with that. Still took me many years. For many, many years, I was, an ardent, only molasses rum kind of guy, except cachaça. Cachaça was good, but molasses rum, that was, the only real rums. And back then here in France, we didn't get, or it was difficult to get really high-end pure sugarcane juice spirits Rhum agricole here in France. Most of the stuff you could buy was low-end supermarket stuff, so not of a lot of interest to me. And then as the time went by, I was like, but you can find really good rum agricole. And then for me nowadays, I still enjoy my molasses rums. I still think that many of them are incredible. But to get the whole terroir thing and the whole where did the rum come from, the difference in soil, in everything, pure sugarcane juice became my favorite rums. Still had a little place in my heart for Venezuelan rums, because been married now for 15 years to a girl from Venezuela and lived in Venezuela for a year and visited several of the distilleries there, and I'm good friends with people over there. Nowadays I still drink those rums, but when I just enjoy drinking and I'm not looking for a huge flavor explosion, but I go between Barbados rum, Venezuelan rum. I mean, Foursquare, of course, is doing an excellent job doing, some of the best molasses rums out there in the world. And but Jamaica, for the flavor, is more where I would, buy my rums, my molasses rums nowadays. And then after many years, like 4 or 5 years of having started Left Hand Spirits. So that's my company. Left Hand Spirits, well, first of all, left hand because I'm left-handed and I like to do things differently than most people. So left hand came from there. And it also came actually as a homage, as a tribute to Venezuela, because in Venezuela, as you well know, Federico, they say con la mano izquierda para que se repite, which basically means let's say cheers with our left hand so that we may do it again another day. Basically, since most people are right-handed, people have to think about taking the glass with the left hand. And then, so when you do that, it's kind of a sign of respect to the people that you're drinking with. And I really thought that was so cool. And for me, it was so easy to be in Venezuela because as a left-handed person, I would obviously reach for my glass with the left hand. Anyway, Left Hand Spirits is not just rum. I also try to work with Peruvian pisco, developing a mezcal from Venezuela. We've been at it for like the last 6 years, that you might know of, or at least a type of spirits, cucuy. So working on that, and yeah, basically trying to, and I'm also the brand ambassador once in a while for Astounding Whiskey, a Danish whiskey company. But what all of these companies always have in common under the Left Hand Spirits is that it's just because that's what I prefer, pure, how to say this, pure alambic rums, pure pot still spirits, pure pot still. Starting whiskey is a pure pot still whiskey. Sarkai pisco is a pure pot still pisco, and so on. So it's always the same thing because that's what I like. It's not that I dislike the other producers. It's just I prefer to have locally sourced things that comes from around the distillery, at least. Created by people with a lot of passion, and I think that's where you find the most interesting products. It's when you can really feel the impact of the people behind the brands on their products. If it's rum or whiskey or pisco or mezcal or whatever, doesn't matter. It's just I like to feel that closeness to the original products. I mean, that's also why I live in France. We have such a diversity of wines, cognacs, Armagnac, Calvados, cheeses. Everything is, locally produced. Many small producers, and that's what I really enjoy. And then one day I ran into first on Facebook actually this guy called Robert Greaves, who created Moba Rum. So I mean, he had everything that I was looking for in a rum. He was doing something that most South Africans don't understand and still don't. Well, they're changing little by little, but he was doing something really weird and still do, which is a funky pure sugarcane juice rum. So funky as if it was a Jamaican rum, but pure sugarcane juice as if it was an agricole from the French islands. Not a blend between the two, not a mixture of the two. It's a whole different category. It's different rum, but it's for people who enjoy both. Well, that's where I get most of the interest. It's for people who have enjoyed Jamaican rums and who also enjoy agricole rums. And for those people, they kind of enjoy our rums as well. And in the process of creating a whole range together with Robert and his team in South Africa, incredible people. I mean, they used to be self-sufficient, living in the north of South Africa, in the middle of nowhere, far from, you know, any big city. So, you know, they do all their own labels, bottling, everything is done on the farm. It's really, you can really talk about farm to bottle. I mean, I'm wearing a Moba rum t-shirt right now, and that was printed at the distillery because they have the machines there to do everything. They're totally self-sufficient. The only things that we don't produce at the distillery is the t-shirt itself or the glass bottle. But the labels, the bamboo labels that we get engraved by laser, like these ones, those are laser engraved at the distillery. This was a little bottle that was made for me by Robert. And I hope he's seen. If he is, here, cheers, Robert. Yeah, Robert had basically everything. It's just that he's in South Africa and far away from the main pure sugarcane juice rum market, which is France. And I transferred with him a lot of the color codes on the labels and so on, so that the French market could understand it. And Robert had already done a fair in the UK to show off the rums over there, and a lot of the industry people had enjoyed his rums and said, well, that's a damn good start, you know, but let's see what this can become. And we did another fair in the UK, same again, a lot of good response, but the UK market is not a huge market for pure sugarcane juice rums, whereas France is historically the biggest market for pure sugarcane juice rums. So we launched Moba here in France. It's been doing incredibly well together with our partners, which is La Maison du Whisky, who have an incredible amount of super high-end rums and whiskeys and mezcals and piscos and whatever that they distribute in France, but also in the rest of Europe. So thanks to their network and my network, we've been now expanding, and now you can find Moba in Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, Belgium, Holland, a little bit in the UK, yeah. So what we are trying to do.
I have a question.
Please.
Are you getting an echo?
No, I'm seeing it perfect. No, the echo is no. It's good.
All right. And then, so let's talk about Africa, the continent, right? And then, you're saying about different places that are creating or growing sugarcane,
yep.
But also distilleries in the Africa continent. But what is Africa continent, and what are the sister brothers? Because we were having this conversation out of this call, and you telling me about a call you had with Ian Burrell. So I want to know a little bit more about this.
Yeah, okay. So basically, it was a fun talk with Ian because he created this really nice rum, a rum blend, Equiano, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is a blend of Mauritian rum. So if you look at the map that you just pulled up, to the right hand of the purple island, which is Madagascar, which is on your right lower end of Africa, right to the right of that is Mauritius and Réunion. So Mauritius, as I said, a country that I love enormously. We have a lot of good friends. If anybody's watching from Mauritius, big heads up to you guys. So he did a blend with New Grow rum, so from Grace Distilleries, and Foursquare rum from Barbados. And for him, that's Africa and the Caribbeans. And of course, he's right. I mean, you know, it is true. But as I told him, just because, you know, in our little industry circles, we like to have fun sometimes, I was like, but go try tell people in Mauritius that they live in Africa. And he was like, yeah, but, you know, it's the African subcontinent. I'm like, yeah, but then after Mauritius, so Mauritius is a little island down to the right, furthest to your right. So closer to Africa than Mauritius, you have Réunion. Réunion is a part of France. By the way, they make great rum. The only rum that we like to compare to, because in styles, somehow, some way, they're close to what we're doing. And I think that they're more or less the only producer in the world that that is close to, a little bit similar to what we're doing, called Savannah. So again, big heads up to them. Love the people from Savannah, great rums. They do high ester molasses rum, but they also do some slightly funky agricole rums, and now they're doing more and more. And they're allowed to call
Savannah rum is coming from Reunion.
What, sorry?
Savannah rum is coming from Reunion Island.
Yeah. So yeah, very cool. So they're allowed to make pure sugarcane juice rum and call it agricole rum because they're still in a French island. So basically, even though we're close to Africa, they're in Europe. They're part of the European Union. They have the euro. You know, it's like, but they're right next to Madagascar. Then we come to Madagascar, and again, Madagascar is a rum producer. And again, Madagascar, you can see that once upon a time it was torn apart from Africa, and it's a part of Africa. But again, Madagascan people are quite different from African people, and their culture is quite different from African culture. So again,